Hello, my wonderful podcast listeners. No, it's not a mistake. I am back with a new podcast for you. And I'm sneaking in by the end of March to celebrate International Women's Month and Women in Wine Day, which was March 25th. Thanks for coming along for the ride on the Wine Road.
With more women in general in the wine industry, you're seeing better experiences as well. And also, you have to give thanks to the strong female presence that was here before us.
I learned to translate flavors in my mind onto a piece of paper, remembering what those flavors were, and then doing percentages. It was really fun. And that's how I started Crocker Starr, by math and science.
She's a shining example of success in Napa Valley, Pam Starr of Crocker Starr. We'll hear how the wine industry has treated her over the years and how she fell into her partnership without intention. She'll be my second guest today. I'll start with Katie Madigan, one of two winemakers at the national brand St. Francis Winery based in Kenwood, California. I met up with both of today's guests just last week before the March 25th Women in Wine Day. As I am prone to do, I'll start with Katie's history. She was lucky enough to develop an interest in wine as a result of her parents' love and enthusiasm about the beloved nectar.
Yes, they are wine enthusiasts still, and growing up, they always put different bottles in front of me, not only great wine or what they thought was great wine, but also everyday drinking wine and the importance of sharing good wine with your friends and with good food. So when they retired up here, I moved up here to be close to them, and with my background in chemistry, I thought what a natural progression to learn more about fermentation science and get to be outside a lot, which is always wonderful.
Yeah, a lot of winemakers come from the chemistry side rather than like enology studies and viticulture. So you can certainly see how that ties into what you're doing.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different avenues, I think, to get to winemaking, especially these days, but certainly the allure of connecting that science-art bridge is alluring to a lot of people.
How was it for your folks? I'm just now thinking of this. When you sat a bottle down in front of them and said, I made this one. That must have been real exciting for them.
They are. They're thrilled. They get free wine for life, so they're invested.
Not even at just an employee discount?
No, they could just drink whatever they would like, and for them that makes the education investment has handsomely paid off.
So you had a chance to work harvest, which, interestingly, can be a defining moment for people because it either sparks a desire or they're like, nah, no, I don't want anything to do with this.
Agreed. I think harvest makes or breaks you. I still enjoy it. In the beginning, you have all this excitement and the craziness. I call it organized chaos because you don't know what every day is going to bring, but you know that you're doing something impactful for that vintage of wine every day. And that is what continues to kind of draw me in.
And that harvest was here at St. Francis.
It was, yes. I was one of 5 interns that year, and not only was it great to meet other people, but they were interns from all over the world. I was here with an intern from France and Argentina, Chile, and I thought, what an amazing community that the world has brought together for one common goal, which is just to make a great drinking beverage.
Did you consider maybe going off to another country yourself and trying that?
I did. I still think about it. I would love to experience harvests in other countries. I think what keeps me here is just the motivation I have all the time to take what the vintage has given me and see that through to the bottle.
So that first harvest was 2002?
Yes, 2002.
And you've been here all along?
I have, yes. I did go to UC Davis and study enology viticulture, but I thought, wow, I can study and I can work at the same time, and what's better than that than having that practical experience along with your reading and lectures.
Why don't you take us through the ranks of being the intern and to where you are today as winemaker?
When I was an intern, my primary job was to sample the grapes for sugar and acidity for the winemaker. travel all over the county and go to some pretty funky and neat vineyards and really learn the topography and the microclimate and how that impacts wine. Coupled with inoculating tanks all day, every day, and checking their fermentation progression. And to be honest, my job these days, moving up into lab tech and then assistant winemaker for Tom Mackey for 8 years, and finally winemaker, my jobs haven't changed that much. But I think that's because I still enjoy all of those activities. I still enjoy sugar sampling, and I still enjoy adding yeast to tank. It's my own personal connection to the vintage.
She has a bright smile on her face as she's saying that, too. You can tell she truly enjoys it. So you took over after Tom Mackey left, huh?
I did, yes. When he decided to retire in 2011, he asked if I would step in as winemaker, and it's been such a joy to go from working for Tom and to continue being winemaker for St. Francis.
An early responsibility for you was handling the Chardonnay production, and you chose to pick fruit at night. Were they not doing that at the time?
Some people were. It's been a constant theme for the guys who do champagne or sparkling here in the States. And I thought, what's better for still wine than the same kind of process that works so well for sparkling wine? So we looked into it, and we found that the grapes are coming in cleaner and their acidity is staying more constant when we do pick as it's very cold in the middle of the night.
And there's something about getting up at 2 a.m. that you just love, right?
Yes, I am a morning person.
That's early morning.
She's Katie Madigan, and I'm covering women in wine today. And doing so, it seems appropriate to ask my first guest if she's ever felt a gender imbalance or discrimination while working in the industry.
I've never felt that here at St. Francis. Certainly, it's been a big topic in the wine industry, a very serious issue in the wine industry, and I think you see it on the marketing and sales side. I've seen some of my male counterparts maybe hesitant to watch me do things in the cellar, but I think nobody has ever stopped me or said that I couldn't do that. I think it's more like, do you feel comfortable doing that? And that's individual for a man or a woman, whether or not they want to work in the cellar.
And hopefully no sexual harassment?
No, not for me here. Mm-mm.
I spoke with 2 Napa winemakers last year on International Women's Day, and neither of them had claimed that they were unnecessarily challenged being a woman in the industry. So it seems like it's growing in the proper direction.
Yes, I think with more women in general in the wine industry, you're seeing better experiences as well, and I'm really happy to hear that. And also, you have to give thanks to the strong female presence that was here before us, the Eileen Cranes of the world, who probably did have a lot of those issues, but they were strong enough to stand up against them and really pave the way for women winemakers now.
And I can tell by your name and your necklace that you are Irish, and you don't often want to mess with an Irish woman.
That's right. There's no wrath worse than an Irish woman.
I don't want to touch on an unfortunate subject, but I have a feeling that Chris Silva, the former CEO and president, who was such a dynamic man and seemed very caring. I just met him 2 or 3 times.
Chris Silva succumbed to cancer at the very young age of 52 in 2017.
The way he talked and ran his company, I imagine his guidance probably kept things in check as well.
Absolutely. Chris was a stickler for being polite and, most importantly, showing others respect. So it's still in our culture here at St. Francis. One thing that I really, really do love about St. Francis is that just as important as our job descriptions is respect for your coworkers from the highest level to the yearly interns like I was. So that says a lot about the company itself.
How would you describe your winemaking style?
I describe my winemaking style as very refreshing for the white wines and full-bodied and textural for the red wines.
That sounds pretty tasty.
Yeah, I think, of course, there's a lot of conversation in wines about what it smells like and flavors. But I think for most of us, one of the reasons that we gravitate to or away from certain wines is just the way it makes us feel. And that is something extra that I kind of associate with textures.
Concerning her last statement, she also said she's evolved over the years and now has enough experience to make her wine by her senses. And then she checks the numbers later to make sure she's on track.
Yes, I think, we've all read, many people in the industry, we've all read the same books and we've maybe even had the same professors, but it's your personal experience and connection to those wines. And I really enjoy tasting the tanks every single day during fermentation, and what is that tannin extraction, how does that feel to me personally, and kind of match that up with the chemistry myself.
Well, you must be doing something right, because in 2015 you were awarded Best Woman Winemaker by the International Women's Wine Competition, and also Zinfandel Producer of the Year in 2014 and 2015 at the California Zinfandel Championship. So congrats.
Thank you. It's a great honor. Those were fantastic awards. And, I think sometimes during harvest, we wonder if we're doing it right. And so when we get awards later on, it kind of gives us a little affirmation that we're doing something right.
The affirmation's nice, but almost every winemaker says, I don't care about the awards. But then they're glad to talk about them afterwards. How's the dynamic between you and co-winemaker Chris Lawton?
Oh man, Chris and I, we have a great relationship and it's very collaborative. We don't share any winemaking in terms of varietal, but it's so nice to go to work every morning and during harvest and say, this is what I'm seeing in the vineyard. What are you seeing with your varieties? And just have that conversation so that we both come away more informed and making the best possible wine for the vintage.
How many varieties do you have now here at St. Francis?
Well, let's see. We have 5 nationally distributed varieties, but what a lot of people don't know is we actually have 14 different varieties that we grow right here on the estate, and Chris and I each have small little lots of wine that we tinker with, and that keeps us extra motivated and a little fun side project.
So how many cases are you producing a year in total here at St. Francis?
Total production here at St. Francis is about 100,000 cases, and that's over 37 different bottles of wine that we produce, sold nationally and even internationally.
And you mentioned you work with small lots, so you're not a big production, large-scale producer.
Correct. Yeah, we have everything from, 50 cases of 10-year tawny port that we make to our nationally distributed wines that you'll see at your local retailer across the country.
That helps provide that handcrafted taste.
Absolutely, and it allows us to know what's really showing us the vintage and what is impactful every year for winemaking.
So you've been here for 20 years now. Do you have any desire to try a new setting or new changes, new challenges, or do you see yourself maybe staying and seeing how far you can go here at St. Francis?
Nothing's on the horizon. I am still really enjoying my time here. The great thing about winemaking is that every vintage is different. So every year is kind of like starting a new position and wondering what that year is going to bring. And I still really feel motivated by that and just the people that we work with here.
I bet Tom Mackey, with all his years here, was telling you that I'm still learning.
Yes, Tom. One of my favorite quotes about Tom is somebody once asked him, "What's the best wine you've ever made?" And his answer was, "I haven't made it yet." And I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm glad that you weren't too busy and you're closed today, so it's not crazy here like it can be so often.
We picked a great day, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
What a pleasant gal, Katie Madigan of St. Francis Winery. How fortunate for her that she's been able to grow her career in the wine industry at one place, St. Francis. For details about the winery, visit stfranciswinery.com. That's stfranciswinery.com. Today's topic is women in wine. My next guest is the president and co-founder of Crocker Starr in St. Helena, Napa Valley, Pam Starr. She has great enthusiasm about working in all aspects of the wine industry and shares some common experiences with Katie. Pam and I met on Wednesday and we sat in their fermentation cellar. So you'll hear some work going on and a little music in the background once again, which, creates an appropriate setting to talk with the woman who oversees the space.
Yeah, it's good to bring people into real spaces. This is a live, living, actionable winery, and the team downstairs, the all-female wine team, is bottling our premier Napa Valley lot that we put in for 2022. It was a special Sauvignon Blanc that our winemaker Evan Cameron over-vintaged and is we raised quite a bit of money for. So we're really happy that we could contribute back to the community.
That's great. And I knew that there was a restored farmhouse on this property, but I didn't know the history of the property went back so far.
It's a great property. The Crocker Vineyard used to be the James Dowdell family winery, and the activities here before Prohibition were multiple. There were fruit orchards here, prune orchards, walnuts. There was a brewery on the property. There was a distillation section on the property, and the brandy was aged in what is now called the Casale. It's a really old 1870s stone building with a funny little peaked rusted roof on the top, and the pots were burnt in a courtyard just outside, which is now enclosed. And Charlie bought the property in 71 from the last of the Dowdell descendant family, was somebody who was like sideways related, I think. Yeah. And so when we met, there had never been a resurrection conversation about bringing the winery back into the 20th century, so here we are.
But had grapes been grown here pretty much the whole time?
Yes, and this is a classic Napa Valley story. In fact, you're sitting in an area that has been in agriculture for over 150 years contiguously, and grapes have been a very large part of it.
I love how you talk about your love of the business, and like Katie, who I talked to earlier in the week, she started with a harvest. And as I said to her, harvest is a make or break event. If you do a harvest for the first time, you're either going to love it or you're probably going to hate it.
I would agree with that statement. It's not for everybody, let's just put it that way. But I think there is something for everyone when you are first an intern in a winery and you just do harvest for the first time. There are so many facets to harvest. There's generally a niche for somebody, right? So if you just want to be in the analysis part, you can be in the laboratory. Or if you want physical labor, there's plenty of that. If you want to do some sales and marketing, you better understand exactly how wine is made. From several different perspectives. You could follow a winemaker, you could follow a cellar master, and you could follow an owner.
I've done 6 harvests, and they found a... What's that look for?
You did 6?
Yeah, well, 1 day.
Oh.
So not like 6 2-month periods.
Okay.
No.
Yeah,
just helping out, just experience it, and they always found something for me to do, and it was varied with each one, what I did. So, but I really enjoyed it. I like getting dirty, so there's no problem. But that sparked your interest, huh? So you went to UC Davis. However, you were going to go into dentistry?
Okay, that's funny. You read my background.
Yes.
Good job, Jeff. I was. I came from a very conventional family. My parents were raised in Midwest Canada, and they left and ended up in Oregon and had 4 girls, and I'm one of them. And so we really didn't have a widespread knowledge of winemaking. My mother drank wine out of bottles with raffia on them, and my dad didn't drink at all. And so we didn't have that growing up.
Raffia, the woven straw or palm leaf material, which means Pam may be referring to the classic Chianti basket-held bottles. When she went to UC Davis, she studied fermentation science, which led her to the food science department.
I mean, I was like a kid in a candy store with all this fabulous science. I love science and math. And so when I got out of graduated, I decided that I would apply for a job at Genentech for a lab tech position. It was Genentech then, not Genentech now. And then I also took an internship with Sonoma-Cutrer, which it was Sonoma-Cutrer then and not now. It was Bill Benetti. They were in construction. It was super fancy. They had a fancy chilling tunnel, and They had great people working for them, and I was able to kind of touch every point of winemaking there. I'm so grateful. That I got to put my hands on everything. I drove a forklift for the first time. Right. Back then, you didn't have to be licensed, so it was great. I was studying to take the dental admissions test, thinking that's what I would go into because it was science and math. And
even though you were studying fermentation science, you were still going to go into dentistry.
Yes, I was. My father's a retired orthopedic surgeon, or he was practicing then, and I certainly like the doctor life. I like how they live, and I like how they think, and I didn't want to do what my dad did, but I like dentistry, and I like sensory, and so I found it very fascinating, and plus it's fun to think upside down, inside out, and up and backwards. So while I was studying, I joined Sonoma-Cutrer as a harvest intern, and I worked there for 5 months. And I never took the dental admissions test. And that was it. And I went back to school, and I did a little bit more science, thinking maybe I'll go into the science world of maybe I'll go to Procter & Gamble or, down food science. I didn't know.
That's what Dr. Richard Peterson did. Did you know that?
I did know that.
Okay.
I did. I met him early on when I was in college. Holly Peterson was my sorority sister, and at UC Davis, and she hosted the sorority girls down at her father's place. I think it was in Carmel area, Monterey area, and we got to meet Dr. Peterson at the time. So that was a thrill.
When he was working at Monterey Vineyards, I guess.
That's right. That's right.
So you were smitten with the industry, huh? You just fell in love with it.
I did. I didn't know what happened to me. I never came from making anything, right? Really, I didn't know how to cook at the time. And so really, I just fell in love with the fact that taking something that was so naturally produced and extracting juice from it and then having indigenous yeast or adding yeast do the real work, right? All we had to do was be monitors and watch progress and apply simple science to it. But I think it was more the aroma, the headiness of fermentations that kind of, it sealed the deal. It's one thing to taste grape juice, but when you are in the middle of watching that transformation and every step of the way, the cloudiness level, the smell of the yeast in the beginning stages, and then all of a sudden the alcohol comes on and it forces up the esters of the fermentation. It was just super attractive. But what I didn't really understand about the business is how business was conducted. Like, for instance, how do these people, how do people find their wine? How do they market it? I knew nothing about the business side of it. And Sonoma-Cutrer was such a great entree for me because they were having conversations about whether to put in a croquet court or a lawn tennis court. And I found myself raising my hand several times, like, how does that affect you, and how does that help your winery? And it showed me how social the business really is and how people will follow you and buy your wine because of the relationship they make with you.
Especially if you give them a reason to hang around for a while. That benefits you as well.
It does work that way. They're hanging around and they feel like it's a home away from home. And today that is very valid. Today outside of Crocker Starr Winery, we're redoing our gardens to make places for people to come and sit. Our members are super loyal, and maybe they want to come and hang out and have a glass of wine and not do a whole formal tour, which we're happy to do.
She's Pam Starr of Crocker Starr in St. Helena. We'll hear about the various places she honed her craft when I continue my travels on the Wine Road. We are back on the Wine Road. Women in Wine is today's theme. I'm sitting with Pam Starr, whose love of the industry is quite obvious. Even to this day, she still gets giddy about working with wine and sharing her enthusiasm with customers. As we discussed the early stages of her career, I asked her, what was your first paid position?
The Sonoma-Cutrer, I got paid, $7 an hour. That was fabulous. My father was like, seriously, can you get a real job? I'm like, Dad, it's just an internship. I got this. And after I finished going back to Davis, I took a job down at Edna Valley Vineyards, and it was a cellar position. I was hired full time, and I learned a lot about boys in the cellar and the hazing that goes on for new people with no vernacular. There's no vocabulary words that could have been explained to describe some of the equipment that I had heard before. So it was really fun. They tortured me a little bit. And I spent a couple months there, and I met another winery group of people through the Edna Valley Vineyards, and that's how I ended up at Carmenet. And Carmenet was a brand new winery in Sonoma, and they're just about ready to launch the most expensive Cabernet that Sonoma had released at $25 a bottle. In 1984, 5, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow is right. And they asked me to join their team and be their enologist, and I did, and it was super great. It was a construction site. Alf Bertelsen dug caves there, and they were beautiful caves. They were not sealed. They were kind of wet and groggy, and they smelled clean, and we had beautiful, clean cement floors, but I felt like we were in such a natural environment with a really beautiful flora on the stone. And because we were so new, everybody who worked on the cellar team, we all pitched in. I mean, I did the enology part, but we all pitched into the cellar, and it turns out that there was a graduate student and a pomologist. It wasn't like it is today, where we were all from science. It was a good crew.
And science is a great place to be from. You know, it really gives you a different perspective, but one that's needed, and then you get creative as you're going along.
It helps, especially when you're going to start your own winery. And I feel like math and science has always been a part of winemaking. I think I recall a seminar that Warren Winarski gave, and he said there's math in every aspect of nature. Did you go to that seminar too, Jeff?
No, but I listened to Warren talk about the golden circle and geometry for like 20 minutes at one point.
He's so fascinating. But if you really if you just digest 1% of what the golden circle is and the geometry and everything, the next thing you know, you're looking at a forest and all you see are shapes. So, and I think winemaking's a lot like that. I was very lucky to be schooled by people who made blends on pieces of paper before they ever tried to put them together on a bench trial. So I learned to translate flavors in my mind onto a piece of paper, remembering what those flavors were, and then doing percentages. It was really fun. I loved it. And that's how I started Crocker Starr, by math and science.
You're creating a puzzle in your mind of flavors. So during that point of time, when you were going through the ranks, do you find yourself being treated any differently as a woman? Or did the guys in the cellar just have fun with you as much as they could without crossing a line?
I was probably singled out almost all the time. When I joined Carmenet Group, they were a pretty progressive company where they aligned themselves with 2 other wineries and became the Chalone Wine Group. So it was Chalone Winery, Acacia Winery, and Carmenet. And I was the only female. And I was definitely a token. So it was easy to see me, and it was easy to ignore me. And so I wasn't one to be ignored. I had lots of questions, and I wanted to participate. So I took the risk, and it is risky in a crowd of people who are not the same as you are. They don't look like you. They don't have the same sort of chemical makeup as you do, and men and women think differently, and we're trained differently. And not that that's a bad thing, and I don't think
it's a good thing, because it's good to have the balance.
Absolutely. I like the mix. And so, sure, were there things that happened that I wish hadn't happened? Maybe. But
a guy could say that, too.
I think a guy could say that, too, for sure. Thanks for saying that, Jeff. It's really, we never talk about that, right? We don't talk about what men go through with other men, or men go through with other women. And but I think the conversation today is very interesting, because women, because we have reproductive parts, it makes us a very unique gender in the workplace. And unfortunately, we haven't made as much progress as I think we should have in the past 40 years. Our awareness of people in general today is strong. And I think it's not just gender specific, but it's about people and acceptance of diversity and differences. And boy, our world is in turmoil over these differences. And
surprising.
It's really surprising. And so whatever I can do to support and uphold somebody wanting to know about how to get into the wine business, whether it be male or female, I'm open for conversations. I happen to have mentored more women than men.
Appropriately, too, I would think.
Yes, although there are men who would like to probably say, oh, I learned something from you, but can't let those words slip between their lips. It's silly men. Ego is something very important in the wine business if you're going to be the leader of a program.
There's a lot of women coming into the business, that's for sure. It's just that extra 2 or 3 steps that they're falling short, the top executive positions, but finally, more and more landing there as well.
Yeah, definitely hard to be, like the executive positions are certainly overlooked. A lot more men apply aggressively, and I think today there are more women achieving general managers, presidents, CEOs, CFOs, executives than ever before because they're being encouraged to be more assertive with who they are and their capabilities, though we fall short, like you say.
Well, there's some helpful advice, ladies. Consider being more assertive. It's worked for Pam, but becoming a president and owner depended upon a chance encounter. If you've listened to my podcast over the years, you've heard me refer to serendipity, which many agree occurs often in the wine industry. And not only did it benefit Pam's career, it led to her current co-founder, co-owner, president position. Now that is serendipity of the highest degree.
I am very grateful that I met my business partner, Charlie Crocker. It was serendipity, and it all started with a soils map that I was following from the northeast side of St. Helena to the southeast side of St. Helena, at which I landed at Charlie's Vineyard, the old James Dowdell property. And, Charlie has a background of, obviously he comes from San Francisco and there's banking involved, but he went to medical school and he has he has a love of science. And when I met him, he had Crocker Capital Investment and he was investing in a medical business on the East Coast. So he really doesn't have the same kind of passion for wine that I do, but he has a passion for seeing grounds and grapes and properties transformed into something tangible, collectible. And he's also pretty competitive. So when I met Charlie...
I think the word profitable needs to be in there too, right?
Well, yes, he is, and I wish I could amass that kind of profitability, but, we're equal partners in Crocker Starr, and, it would be easy to assume that, Charlie financed the whole thing, but he would sit here and tell you that I've worked really hard to not borrow money and only work so that whatever we generate as far as revenue, we could afford to do the next year. So it took me 19 years to build the building we're sitting in. I was in a custom crush facility for 19 years. Was right. And I finally realized we were spending more money there and we could afford to finance the building. And so that's how this came to be. Charlie's he loves the fact that I had such a fire in me to make this vineyard be a collectible property. So that was his interest, and my interest was to create a wine that was sought after, that was collectible, people would follow, that would generate loyalty. And I'm so grateful to everybody who has Crocker Starr wines in their portfolio and in their cellars that come to see us, because they're the ones who allowed us to be able to be here today.
You've achieved your goal, that's for sure, and it's ongoing.
It's ongoing. Goals happen every 10 years. We have to boost ourselves every 10 years. And right now we're in a growth mode. So this is the beginning, or like the end of our third decade, I guess. We're 25 years old, And by the time we're 30, I hope that we are about a 7,500 case winery. We've been 4,000 cases forever. And so we're on a path to, in the next couple of years, hopefully achieve, all from the property, of course. This will all be estate grapes. And we're on a good path.
How much longer do you think you're doing it? Do you see 40, 50? Zelma Long, she's still working. She's in her 50th year now.
She rocks. Zelma's my hero. She was, in fact, a little story about Zelma. She didn't know this, but I had such a girl crush on her in the 80s. She was the first female winemaker to achieve general manager, winemaker, president status at a winery and hit over six figures in a salary. And she was the first. I was like, wow, one day, me, right? And so I think that you can make wine for as long as you can stand. I'm no longer the head winemaker for Crocker Starr. I'm the owner / founding winemaker. I have found a woman who has a fire in her, and she has been leading and making our wines since the summer of 2019. Her name's Evan. Again, I think I mentioned her before, and she has.
I met her, and she's a dynamic gal. I mean, she's got that firm handshake.
Oh yeah, don't be messing with her. She's she comes in a small package, but she is mighty, 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 and I'm very enamored with her youthful approach to the future of our company, and I really am finding that I'm learning how to look through her eyes as to what our growth plan is.
I'm sure their future is as bright as a Pam Starr. Sorry, I couldn't resist. And they are anxious to welcome back the crowds to Napa Valley and St. Helena. They had several groups on hand when I was there last week, but they relish the idea of hosting more groups in this nearly post-pandemic era. And as a boutique wine producer, you may be surprised at how relaxed and rustic Crocker and Starr is.
We call ourselves organically elegant, and we fully expect people to have a wine grower experience. So we touch the vines and then we taste the wines. And we have tables made out of oak trees that have fallen on the property, walnut trees that have fallen on the property. Charlie designed our garden. So the garden experience here are all plants that have been transplanted from the 1870s estate just further down the road. And yeah, so even the farmhouse where our office is, that's a 1910 farmhouse that was going to be destroyed because there was some reconstruction going on down the street at our neighbor's place. And so Charlie said, well, if you're going to take it down, can I just take the building? And he cut it in two and drove it down this end of the vineyard. And that's now our farmhouse where we have a porch and we can receive people there, and it's mostly our offices today. COVID changed all that, but we have a great arbor, and we're sitting in the mezzanine where sometimes we host business lunches and seminars. So yeah, come back anytime.
Do you remember how you described why you love winemaking?
Oh my goodness, mysterious, it's sexy, it's magical. I like magic, and nature is magic, and it's a good business.
Pam Starr of Crocker & Starr. For tasting options, visit crockerstarr.com. Starr with 2 R's. What a pleasure it was to sit with both Katie Madigan of St. Francis Winery in Kenwood and Pam in St. Helena to share their success stories as women in wine and pursuing their passion. I have many more podcasts on the way, and thank you for continuing to subscribe to On the Wine Road podcast. You can always find more podcasts at onthewineroad.us. I'm on Facebook /On the Wine Road. Go ahead and like the page if you would. And I'm on Instagram as JD Wine Road. The show's theme was composed by Miguel de Oliveira, and the podcast is researched, written, and produced by me. And I thank you for listening. I'll see you next time on the Wine Road. I'm Jeff Davis.